Welcome, everybody. Welcome, viewers and listeners, to NCITE Insights. This is our new-ish podcast from the National Counterterrorism Innovation, Technology, and Education Center here at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I am not your usual host, Aaron Grace. My name is Blake Ursch. I'm filling in for Aaron today. We're here with Callie Vitro. Callie is one of our graduate students here at NCITE. She's a master's student in criminology, going to pursue her PhD. We're going to talk to her about her experience as a young academic studying extremism and terrorism and what the nuts and bolts of that work looks like. And she had a very interesting experience in London recently, so we're going to talk about that as well. So, Callie, let's just get started. What is an early career researcher?
So it's defined differently based on where you go. When we went to the conference in London that we'll talk about more later, it was defined as someone within 10 years of their PhD on either end. But when we were there, the people who decided to congregate more as ECRs were the people who were sort of still within that program or still students or postdocs. So you kind of just imagine it as someone who is not yet able to have a full career in this space, but they're still pursuing some sort of academic degree or academic post-degree to get to that space and have that research.
So what does, obviously if there's sort of a wide spectrum of people within that fall in that, but what's the, like for you, what does your day-to-day academic work look like as an early career researcher?
For me, I love being an early career researcher right now in this space because it allows me to really explore with so many different people. So I have the opportunity to be able to work with a lot of full-time faculty members here at NCITE, where I can help mostly with my primary professor, Dr. Erin Carnes, in criminology, and I help her with a ton of different projects that are going on. That includes leading undergraduates and trying to get some of that mentorship down before I become a full-fledged post, I don't even know what you can cut that out, before I completely finish my degree. But it also includes supporting that research in whatever way I can. So I can receive some training within survey design, within analysis, within writing up papers for either the government or for an academic journal. But then also in that space, I'm able to shift because I do not have to be full-time on these projects like these professors are. So I do some work also with Dr. and Seamus Hughes, who's now here at NCITE. And I'm able to just sort of explore these different areas and see how they can fit in with my research interests and where I am, which is amazing.
What's some of the, what type of task, I guess, do you like doing the most, or have you found that you've liked doing the most working on these projects?
My favorite part is statistics, and I love working with analyses and within R specifically. So my favorite thing that I can be doing is when I can do data analysis and really go into that quantitative methodology that we do. But I really enjoy just being able to get those skills honed in terms of things like writing and interviewing and talking with people and mentoring. So everything that I can do is really incredible and a great learning experience, but the statistics is definitely my favorite.
What have you been able to, what projects are you working on that you've been able to take that interest in statistics and lend it to? As far the work that Dr. Carnes is doing, that Seamus is doing, which projects have you found most interesting to you?
It is a little bit, and every single one we need some sort of analysis. So whether that's our full-fledged sitting down and doing that analysis, or whether it's creating the survey and figuring out how we can best code those survey answers to make analysis better in the future. Every single project that we're doing is kind of at a different stage in the design. So we have one where we have already collected the data and we're analyzing everything. And for that one, I'm working with that chatbot project, working on some data collection and analyzing that to kind of work in an area that I'm most interested in. But other places, I'm just mentoring undergrads on how to better code the data that they find so that way we can do that analysis in the future. And for some, I'm coding myself. So it really is just on all spectrums of the projects.
What does coding, what is, for those of us that don't know, what does it mean to code data?
So mostly it has to do with things that are not already in number form. So we think of age, that's a very easy metric of, that's something that we would find the mean or the standard deviation of very quickly. But when we're talking about things like case files, such as we're looking at some ISIS case files right now, and you have to go through and code those for certain things that you find throughout. So different traits or qualities that you might find within that file that you can code for whether that's present or absent there. During our chatbot study, we're also doing some cool coding where people are analyzing what they watched in a video, and we're coding to see whether or not they got that correct. So if they say they saw a man in the video, we can code that as correct for gender, for example.
So how does that relate to, well, I guess for those of you who don't know, the chatbot project is, that's something that Dr. Erin Carnes, who's right across the hall over here, and Dr. Joel Elson are doing. working on developing a chatbot to report suspicious activity. So if you see something that you're concerned about, you engage with this chatbot, this online program. Is that right, Callie? So when you're talking about like recall and people, entering something into this form, how does that contribute to the chatbot project?
The goal is that if you were to see something suspicious, you'd be able to report it and report it accurately. So if I was to see someone drop a backpack in a public place, that I would be able to remember what that backpack looked like, what that person looked like. So what we do in the chatbot project for parts of it is testing whether or not there are different ways to better recall that information, such as reporting to a chatbot versus reporting to a traditional web form on the computer. So whether a chatbot, the questions that it asks can help a participant more accurately or more thoroughly recall the information that they saw.
Is there anything you can share conclusions-wise that you've seen so far on?
Our initial findings, we found that the prototype chatbot that we had in the web form that we had, they were very similar in terms of the findings, which is really good because that shows us that there is a space for this chatbot that we can continue to perfect and improve it and see whether we can get that past the point of being better than that web form. Because if you think about it, the web form puts a lot of burden on people that have to go through then and read the responses, whereas a chatbot would, in theory, be better at collecting that information into a more succinct place that people could go through. So it's just thinking about how we can better improve that into the future, which our current studies are looking at.
Nice. So that's just one of many projects that you're involved in. You and I were both in London recently, last month in March. Can you tell us about the IAPS project and what your role was in London?
Yeah, so as you saw, it was such a unique experience. A lot of times we go to these academic conferences and you have to be preparing your own presentation. You're very focused on your own research and how you're going to present that to a room of people and then listening to other people's research. Whereas this conference was really just centered on the idea of mutual discussion and having these conversations about things like challenges that are in this field, no matter what lens you're looking through to look at those challenges. So when we showed up there, nobody had research prepared, nobody had, presentations ready. It was sitting down in a room with people that you don't normally get a chance to just discuss with, and sitting at these tables and coming up with what are the biggest challenges that we're facing in this field today, and how could we potentially solve those challenges. So my role in that space was being one of the early career researchers that was invited to participate. So I was the one from the United States. There were a few others, maybe 3 others that are current students, PhD students, and then a couple others that are postdocs. And all of us were there to sort of, because our mentors were people who recognized that this is such an important aspect of this type of research, we were invited to participate, which was amazing. And we used that space to both connect with each other and kind of go through those challenges that we all face as ECRs, but also just join that discussion. And I think lend sort of new insight to something that a lot of times people are very grounded in the research that they're doing. And as ECRs, we might have a different perspective to bring to that table.
Did you hear any common things or I guess research things that were happening or research topics that were happening elsewhere in other countries that pinged you as being something you're interested in or something that's important in your scope of expertise?
Yeah, I would say that generally we talked a lot about challenges that there are within this research, difficulties with things like collecting the data or having the funding to collect this data, et cetera. And that stuff is always very, very interesting. In particular, there are researchers working on things like risk assessment within this space that I'm very interested in. And here, directly within Omaha at NCITE, we don't look at as often in terms of people within the violent extremism space. And so I spoke a little bit to researchers like Paul Gill about potentially working with him a little bit on a short paper about that and learning more about that in his field.
Awesome. Who were you able to meet and connect with there? It's an international conference. There were people from all over. Did you make any contacts from overseas?
Yeah, I think most importantly the ECRs to me, because those are people that I hope I continue to see throughout the years as we grow and become farther along in our PhD program. So in particular, those ECRs are ones that we all try to share information and hopefully we'll see each other at future conferences. We discuss the differences between our PhD programs and the research that we're doing, and hopefully we can collaborate more in the future. But that was such a unique experience where I feel like we were able to meet every single person in that room. So it wasn't just the other academics that were there, ECRs or full professors, but also the different government officials that were there and talking to people about different avenues for this research and how it changes between the US and the UK, for example. So it really was a very unique experience.
Yeah, the ECR component of that project is obviously very big, and it's also a big part of what we do at NCITE, just trying to foster the next generation of people in this space, because this is going to be your future. Why do you think it's important to have like a network of other ECRs, like you as one of them? So how do you support each other while you're all going through this process?
Yeah, I think it's very special because collaborating with other academics is a very important part of doing this work in general, especially terrorism with that huge international component. That is very, very important. But people like Dr. Gina Ligon, they recognize that being able to do that very early on in your career and start building those relationships will really just foster even more important collaborations for the future and kind of already build that foundation that we can hopefully collaborate more well into the future. So first, that's one of the major parts of this is just being really excited about starting those processes a lot earlier than some people get the chance to. The other part of it is just being a PhD student is hard no matter where you are, and there's a lot of work that goes into it based on trying to balance research and classes and collaboration and personal growth and development. And so being able to talk with them about their strategies and what type of statistics they like to learn about or what classes they take or how they write their papers, those are things that within this field I feel like is very unique to be able to learn from other people that are my age and doing what I'm doing right now. So on that personal level, it was very, very important to me to be able to meet other people that are in this field as well, and really talk to them about those issues.
Do you find like just the subject matter wise, especially like with the stuff that we are studying here, it can be pretty heavy, just knowing that you have like a network, a community of support of your peers, does that factor into your, like, I guess as you're trying to like build your network of ECRs, does that factor into your calculus at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, I'm in the criminology department, and a lot of people study things that are very heavy here at UNO, but I do feel like it's very important to find people studying what you are studying, because I think there are different challenges with studying terrorism than there are studying corrections, for example. And as important as it is to make connections across all graduate students, finding people within your space that are doing the same work is definitely, like you said, very rewarding in that aspect.
Let's back up here. How did you get interested in criminology?
As a child, I discovered in elementary school the show Columbo, and I was immediately obsessed. I own all the seasons on DVD. I watched them all the time. And since then in elementary school, I was so crazy about it, I decided, this is what I want to do. I want to be in this field that Columbo's in. So in 6th grade, I did a research project at my first science fair where I tried to test one of Columbo's things that he found in the show to see whether or not it would work in real life. So I did a science fair project based on that. And that really got me interested in research. And I was so excited about this possibility of testing these different theories that I had, or theories that Columbo had, and seeing whether or not it worked in real life, that it was so fascinating, so much fun, that I decided that was what I wanted to do forever. And so I followed that since, doing that research in that space.
I really want to unpack this Columbo thing. First of all, was your science project, did you find out if whatever you were studying would in fact work in real life?
Yes, but when you're in 6th grade, you don't think as much about the different control variables or concerns with the research that you're doing. So the episode was about subliminal messages, and the person lured someone out of the movie theater using a subliminal message in order to commit the murder eventually that Columbo discovered. And so I was testing to see whether or not that would actually work. So I did some subliminal messages on emotion and response and things like that. So based on my very fundamental analyses, it worked, but it was definitely not very significant, nor was it a very well thought out experiment. But it definitely started pushing the limit for me of being so excited about asking those crazy questions that I could and seeing how I can solve them.
That is a great story. Knowing just your interest in, like, obviously the show itself is compelling, but like, what about criminology in particular? Like, what am I trying to say? Like, what attracted you to like the TV show, and I guess by extension, like the field of criminology? Like, what about well, I'll just stop there.
Yeah. Well, first, Peter Falk was the reason I started watching it. My favorite movie of all time is The Princess Bride. So when I saw that he was in this TV show, I was so excited, and so I had to watch it. But I very quickly realized that he was using his space as a detective for the police department and using this very intelligent psychology background to answer these questions in a way that was very different from the way most people did. So I went and actually studied psychology and criminology to try and understand that balance between them and making sure that we don't get stuck in just one field or one area. So when I was in undergrad, I started doing some volunteer work with the police department there. I was a domestic violence liaison, so I went on calls with all these police officers. And I very quickly recognized that people don't really think through their problems the way that Columbo does. Obviously, because it's a TV show, and in real life, things are a lot more scary and intense. But you also notice there are a lot of issues with the way that the police department works in real life, as we all know, for so many different reasons. And so because of that, I was trying to enter into this field wondering how we can do better in criminology by using different disciplines to better understand how we can act as police officers or correctional officers or anything like that. And that was what really led me here to NCITE because of the interdisciplinary nature of this field and the way that we have psychologists and political scientists and criminologists all sitting at the same table to answer these questions. That to me was so unique and really fulfilled what I was looking for from Columbo, but then all the way through undergrad, which is so exciting.
What's your long-term career plan?
It'll be a long time that I'm here finishing my PhD, many more years. But after that, I really hope to focus on research for a more practical, maybe government-focused setting. Specifically, I'm really aiming to do stuff within sports security and threat assessment. And so my hope would be to do more research in that field about large-scale events, specifically around sports and some of the issues surrounding that.
You yourself are an athlete, right? Or you have an athletic background?
Yeah, formerly I played soccer since I was 3, and it was always my dream to play D1 soccer. That was my plan. In high school, I was talking to coaches, and then I had my 3rd knee surgery, and I was told that I couldn't continue anymore. So it took a very long time for me to be able to even watch soccer again, much less think about how that could fit back into my life. But more recently, I feel like I have recognized that I can still have both those dreams of soccer and criminology together in a way of hopefully protecting things like this big sporting events. I mean, just today, there are Champions League games going on right now, and there were terror threats to the fields. And UEFA just decided that they will go on and play those games, but obviously with enhanced security. And so there are so many issues that come with international sporting events, especially the World Cup, the Champions League, where there are those terror threats, and trying to figure out how we can better protect and prevent things like that from happening.
On that note, I think I heard that you're going to Paris.
Yes, for the Olympics, yes.
So when do you go?
We will be going it's the end of July, beginning of August that the Olympics occur. It's me and my best friend and her dad. We've been Olympic fiends since we were little. We would get up at 3 a.m. to watch the games and sports together, so we're just really, really excited. But I've seen so many and been reading a lot of articles about security enhancements and concerns within the Olympics, so it will be really interesting to see what I can see from a ground perspective based on what the security is like and what the concerns are in huge international sporting events like that.
What element of protecting large-scale sports venues are you most interested in? Like, what piece of securing that is like what you want to focus on moving forward?
Yeah, there's so many different parts of it that I think really fit in with research that I've done. First, within policing, I've tried to do a lot of work within that policing element, and there's some really cool research about soccer hooliganism and the way that we better police fan bases and things like that. So that is one element that I think is really interesting. The second is based on the work that we do on the chatbot. We're talking about reporting, and sometimes that takes weeks and a long time to get through that reporting process. But when we're in a sporting event, if you see something and you say something, how quickly do we respond to that? Or how can we better report things? Maybe a chatbot is the solution to things about short-term sporting events too. So talking about both policing, reporting, and then just assessing and moving on with those threats. So there are so many different avenues to look at this from, and I'm still very much in the beginning stages, so I'm trying to learn everything that I possibly can and hopefully find a better way to focus that down into the future.
Do you feel like this, like your academic career, like the work that you're doing now, like do you feel like you have like had to refocus that energy that you were putting into soccer into this, and like has it helped you I guess cope with the fact that you aren't playing soccer anymore?
Yeah, I think I have felt more at peace, I guess is the right word, in the last year that I've started to really focus on this sporting and security and deciding how to better put these two things together, because I really feel like that part of myself, that soccer was missing out for so many years that I felt like I couldn't watch it or focus on it because I just missed it so much. So I really feel like I'm going back to what I'm most interested in and what kind of made me a person growing up. And I'm really excited to find ways to combine those things together.
Yeah, that's great. Callie, we could talk all day. You have a million interesting things to say and a very, very interesting and fascinating and cool career ahead of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great to talk to you.
Yeah.